Okay, I see that the big hand is on the 2, so I will call to order the regular meeting of the Whitefish City Council on March 20th, 2023. For the record, Andy Fury, Frank Sweeney, and John Mulfeld, are excused from this evening's meeting. We won't go into why they're not here, but and I will ask that Wendy lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, the first item on our agenda tonight is communications from the public. We do have one advertised public hearing, and I would ask that if you'd like to come up and speak, you hold your comments until we get to that public hearing. This is for items that are not on the agenda. If anybody would like to come up, just please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and let us know what you have to say.
Toby Scott, 1478 Barclay Lane, Whitefish, Montana. And it's been a while since I've brought anything up to the attention of the City Council, but a few things had come up on my mind. And I sent them in today. You should have a copy of this sheet before you. And it's just a couple of items to consider in the course of business when you're low on things to do. The first item is I suggested probably a year ago or more to get permission from the highway department or whoever to paint the traffic signal boxes, of which we have about a half a dozen of them around here. There's Baker, Central, Spokane, 13th Street, a few like that. I just noticed this in Bozeman when I would visit down there. They did a great job of painting theirs. They look lovely. I brought it up and nothing has happened, and now I'm noticing that Kalispell is painting theirs. We can't be running second to Kalispell. They're always trying to follow us as a shining example of a great city. The next thing, actually you mentioned earlier, the electric bike and scooter rental, which I guess you have addressed and made some provision to either prevent or control it when they do arrive. But the next thing on that same sort of idea is electric vehicle charging. I just spent a month in Amsterdam, and they have probably 20 or 30% electric vehicles. We don't now, but I do notice that there's a lot of Teslas, there's a couple Rivian trucks, there's a Porsche, and a few others electric. And it's going to get to be that the 2 electric charging stations that we have in the parking lot are not going to be enough. And so as you see on the picture that are included in my paper to you, in Amsterdam, they just have charging stations on the street. And I was thinking that we could probably do that maybe on Railway or 3rd Street. One station serves two spots. When it gets to be that there's enough cars to warrant it, make it so that it's only electric charging parking spots. But until then, make it open, maybe only one of them. But as you see, this picture was there. That's a Volkswagen, of which there are a bunch of electrics over there. And then the spot right where I'm standing taking the picture, those are both electric charging stations. And the stations are quite self-sufficient. You walk up with your credit card or whatever, swipe it, and then you charge away. And then the last thing is just recycling. This is a disappointing time when about 2 years ago I took my truck full of recycling stuff to the recycling center on the snow lot, and it wasn't there. And so I had to drive down to Flathead County Landfill, and I recycled my stuff there. And then I read up, oh no, it had been closed for a month, but geez, we were going to curbside recycling. Then somehow that went away. So now I have to drive down to the Flathead landfill or to recycle stuff. You know, I've got a truck, it gets no miles per gallon. and I don't like going down there. But I thought I would just bring it up as something to sort of put on your docket of things to think about as far as recycling, either bringing back the centralized area or picking up the recycling curbside thing. Either way. That's about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Toby. We are working on the recycling, by the way, so it's on the agenda for a future work session, so. Anyone else wish to speak on anything not on the agenda tonight? Okay, Michelle, anybody online?
I almost forgot what I was doing. Lisa, if you'd like to unmute yourself, please state your name and address. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Lisa Jones, 314 Blanchard Hollow in Whitefish. I wanted to, of course, acknowledge and thank the council and mayor for all you do and all the volunteer hours you spend. Last summer, I came before you during public comment and brought up my gratitude for the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that the city has done with other partners, and also requested your consideration of the Juneteenth holiday as a city holiday, as well as a official DEI committee for the city. And so I just wanted to come back tonight and see if you had had a chance to review those considerations, and if there was any possibility we could revisit that, or maybe you're moving forward or have made a decision. But it'd be great to also to let you know that I'd be happy to help in any way. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Usually we don't get it, do back and forth at this time, but we did, I will just answer your question really quickly. We did, in fact, make Juneteenth a holiday for city employees, correct?
During the retreat, the City Council decided to have staff negotiate with our unions to swap Good Friday holiday for Juneteenth, and that's where we stand. Once those negotiations have occurred and the unions are on board, we can swap it to an entire city-wide holiday.
Okay, so it's in the process. I'm not sure where we stand on the DEI standing committee, however. I don't think that one has been talked about in a while. So thank you, Lisa, for putting that in front of us again. Anyone else wish to speak? I think we already closed that out. Anybody else online? No? Okay, so we will move on to item number 4 on the agenda, communications from volunteer boards. Anyone here from a volunteer board that would like to speak to us tonight? Okay, we will move on to item number 5, our consent agenda. And Ben.
Mr. Acting Deputy Mayor, did I get that correct? I would like to see if we can remove item C, ordinance number 23-03 from the consent agenda.
You can do that. Would you like to put it before or after the public hearing?
We'll put it prior to the public hearing.
Okay.
Next.
All right. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the correct procedure for that. Is that right? Okay. So that is removed from the consent agenda. We just need a motion to pass the 2 remaining items.
I'll make a motion to pass the consent agenda with 2 corrections to the minutes. Page 12.
We need a second first,
Oh,
Rebecca.
sorry.
I'll second it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I think it's actually page 169 under for Counselor Norton. It should be moving a head, not head. And then page 14 under Counselor comments, Norton, 8th line down, it should read rail efficiency and climate something, and then elected officials with an S. So I gave those corrections to Michelle already.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Okay, those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously, just items A and B. We'll talk about item C right now. So Ben, you want to?
Yes, I believe since Rebecca recused from the original vote of this ordinance, she cannot vote on the second reading. Therefore, we do not have sufficient votes to pass this particular ordinance, so I would move it to our next council meeting, which would be April 3rd.
And I'll second it.
Okay, just to get the correct language, postpone would be the correct language for that. Okay, so motion to postponed till our next meeting, April 3rd. Any discussion on that? Okay, those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. That passes unanimously. Which brings us to our one public hearing tonight. Item 6A, consideration of a request from Derek Crittenden, James Rutherford, Bill Carter, and Colton Bear for a preliminary plat to develop 16-lot subdivision located at 817 Colorado Avenue, WPP 23-01. And I think this is why Wendy's here tonight.
Yeah. So again, this is a 16-lot preliminary plat subdivision request on 3.835 acre parcel. The subdivision will be accessed off of Colorado Avenue with a newly constructed public right-of-way. The lots range in size from 6,000 to 8,470. They meet the zoning and size. The application indicates that the subdivision will only be single-family. The gross density of the subdivision is 4.17 dwelling units per acre, which is very similar to neighboring subdivisions. In addition, a 14,200 square foot homeowners park is located in the southeast corner of the subdivision. Finally, no subdivision variances accompany this application, so it was eligible for an expedited review, so you don't have a planning board recommendation before you. So again, the property is at 817 Colorado Avenue. It is currently undeveloped in zone WR3, which is our multifamily low-density residential district. It is surrounded by residential uses. It is served by public services and facilities. We did do all the legal noticing as required by our regulations. Folks were concerned with the density, traffic, drainage, and impact on wildlife. We review subdivisions according to the criteria in the regulations. Under health, safety, and welfare, the fire marshal has reviewed the project for conformance and will meet all of the emergency access and hydrant requirements. The cul-de-sac will be a 60-foot wide dedicated public right-of-way, and emergency services will be able to access the subdivision. This property, as all of city limits, is within the wildland urban interface area. There are a few trees in the northeast corner of the property. Staff is recommending a condition to provide a tree preservation plan along with the engineering plans to identify which trees can be saved during construction. The property is not in the floodplain. It does not have wetlands or stormwater conveyance. Again, access is off of the newly constructed public street. Because the project only has 16 single-family lots, it was small enough that it didn't require a traffic impact study, which is required at 200 trips per day. There's no mapped crucial wildlife habitat or daily or seasonal migration corridors on this site. However, it's likely that deer and other animals travel through the property. We did forward this application request to Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and we did not receive any comments. No surface area is located on the property. However, it is mapped as an area with the potential for high groundwater. So groundwater monitoring data will be obtained during the monitoring window per the engineering standards, and that data will be submitted along with the engineering plans. The site is a little bit higher on the north property line, and it kind of slopes towards the southeast at about 7%. Again, there's no stormwater conveyances, no wetlands. The preliminary drainage plan is proposing to convey stormwater from the west to the east toward an underground stormwater facility in the Homeowners Association Park. Final approval will occur after council approves the preliminary plat. City water is located in Colorado as well as sewer. The applicant is proposing to extend a new cul-de-sac off of Colorado Avenue. It'll be public and built to meet all the city standards, including sidewalks, street trees, street lights, all that good stuff. The applicant will have an option to pay a fee in lieu of street tree installation. The final plan for the new street will be reviewed by the Public Works Department upon preliminary plat approval. Staff will recommend a condition of approval that the developer will locate a sign at the eastern edge designating the area as a future road, and this is a requirement in the subdivision regulations. Colorado Avenue was reconstructed a number of years ago, and there's a shared use path on the west side of the street, but not the east side where the subdivision is located. So there's no sidewalk on the east side, and similar to what we did with the subdivision a couple lots to the south, we'll have the applicant improve a crosswalk from this subdivision over to that shared use path, but no frontage improvements will occur on the Colorado Avenue side. As far as park and open space area, the applicant is required to provide a parkland dedication, which is 11% of the net acreage for the lots that are less than half an acre. So their obligation is 11,217 square feet. And since the park is greater than 10,000 square feet, but less than an acre, the subdivision regulations require the park be set aside as a homeowners association park. And they're proposing around 14,000 square feet. So the standard is being met. Again, the property has a high density or higher density zoning district, but the growth policy designation is urban. However, what they're proposing is urban style lots. So the use, while the zoning maybe doesn't directly match the growth policy, what they're proposing does. Again, that zoning is WR3, which is a low density multifamily residential zoning district. All the setbacks and lot coverage and other matters will be addressed at the time of building permit. But with the zoning district, they could build up to 46 units and have multiplex type of development, but they're choosing to do single family. So the project complies with the zoning regulations, the subdivision regulations, and staff is recommending approval subject to 15 conditions of approval, a lot of the kind of standard subdivision conditions. Again, we're going to request a tree preservation retention plan to be submitted with the engineering plan so we can see what sort of trees can be saved on the backs of some of those lots, hopefully. The cul-de-sac should be fully constructed to the eastern edge of the property and be signed for a future street connection. The applicant shall install a crosswalk and improve the sidewalk on the Colorado Avenue bike shared path on the west side. And then, Michelle, could you bring up page 30, which is the site plan? Is that possible or is that not? Okay, so page 30 of your packets, okay, never mind. On the south side, there is a drainage stormwater facility that drains towards that HOA park. And we want to make sure that the property owners that are directly to the north of that recognize that that is a stormwater facility. So we're asking a note be placed on the plat and also in the CCNRs that common area A to the south of lots 1 through 9 is a designated stormwater facility area and must be maintained in perpetuity. No filling, fencing, or altering of this space is authorized. We just want to make sure those property owners are aware of that important facility for their neighborhood. Can I answer any questions for you?
Questions for Wendy? Go ahead, Giuseppe.
Thank you. Wendy, just for the public's benefit, 2 lots to the south, there is in your map at page 26, there is a subdivision. I count around, I don't know how many lots in there. Is that in existence right now? That's real, right?
Yeah.
Is the zoning of that subdivision the same? Is it WR3 as it is the one that is being proposed right now?
The subdivision to the south, 2 lots to the south, had
Yeah.
a WR2 zoning district.
WR2.
This one has WR3.
So if, just hypothetically, if those were all single lots within the by right of the zoning, how many houses could I build in there? Could happen to be built in there, maximum?
46.
46.
46 units,
46
maybe not
units.
necessarily 46 lots.
Okay.
Because they can do apartments and multiplex type buildings.
While they're proposing
16,
60.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Wendy? Go ahead.
I've got one. You had mentioned that this could only be developed with single family. Why is that the case?
That's what the applicant is proposing.
Okay, is that a condition? Where is that actually?
It was in their application.
Okay, and is that a legally binding thing?
It's what they're proposing. You certainly could make a condition. When they do their engineering plans, they'll have, 1 lot, 1 sewer connection, 1 water connection per lot.
Right. I mean, if it wasn't a condition,
It would be an alteration to what they're proposing. If they want to do something different, they'd have to come back.
I
It'd be
see.
an amendment.
Okay.
You certainly could add that as a condition.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure we need to personally, but good to know. Thank you.
Rebecca?
Wendy, so we're going to do a tree retention plan, but then we're going to allow them to do a fee in lieu for street trees?
Right, so that's for the trees that are on private lots. They'll go out and look at the trees and see if there's any good, healthy trees that can be retained.
Okay, but,
to be located on the private lots. And then the fee in lieu of street trees is a fee that we collect at the time of final plat. And then when there's a home built, then the Parks Department that next year will go out and plant a tree, because then there's a homeowner there that can take care of the tree. Instead of having all the trees put in and there's nobody there to,
I thought it meant that we weren't going to have street trees. So I see what you're saying is we have to wait till someone's actually in a house and can take care of it. Okay.
yep, and it's worked out pretty well, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
I just have a couple of questions for you, Wendy. We're kind of seeing that area develop off of Colorado, and we don't have a transportation plan that has any sort of connection between Colorado and Texas back that far. Is that correct? Do you know?
Right, so that's why as properties are developing, we're making sure that the public rights of way go to the edge of the lot. So at some point in the future, 10, 15, 20, 50 years down the road, there's an opportunity to connect through.
Okay, but they still have a cul-de-sac at the end
Right.
because they have to.
They
for-
have to have
for
a
safety.
turnaround.
Okay.
And we've seen this work pretty well over on Texas. There's a subdivision that had a cul-de-sac, and then when a project on Colorado side connected over, they hooked into that cul-de-sac.
Okay. And then, and the other part is the park here doesn't connect with any of the other
Correct.
parks, because I remember that was a discussion that we had when some of those other
Right.
big properties were developing, is how can we create one centralized park for everybody rather
Yeah.
than each lot have its own?
Yeah, and that's why we had them put it on the southwest corner, because there's opportunities as properties to the east and south develop, 10, 20, 50 years down the road, that maybe there could be a bigger neighborhood park
Okay,
for
so
those
we're not
folks.
precluding that with where the park is in this one?
Right.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Those are all my questions. All right, we will open the public comment period. And first of all, we'll have the applicant, if you'd like to come up and give a presentation, or if you just want to come up and we could answer questions, or if you have whatever you want, you get the first shot at this, so.
Thank you, Council. My name is Bill Carter. Don't have a lot to present, but just a few points to make.
Mr. Carter, if you could just state your name, your address for the record, please.
Oh, currently I'm Bill Carter at 112 Bay Point Drive, Whitefish. I've been a resident of the Valley for 32 years, raised my family here. As you can see on the application, Derek Crittenden is one of the partners in this. That's my son. And then another good buddy, Colton Bear, is a local general contractor. So then my college roommate, Jim Rutherford. So as some of the public has mentioned, these big out-of-state developers coming in to, in a sense, rape and pillage our area. We're a group of local guys, and we feel like we're doing a project in the best interest of the city. I think your question was almost asking, well, why aren't we going for higher density? If the land allows it, why aren't we? Why are we choosing the lesser? Well, if development is considered evil by some, we think we're choosing the lesser of three evils. We certainly could have done higher density. This is a project we just feel that we want to do. So if for the public or whoever may not have been privy to the staff report of March, every finding 1 through 9 was positive. No negative impacts, no negative impacts. And so we feel like we're doing a good job for the city of Whitefish, and I'm happy to answer any questions. We do have a representative for 406 Engineering here tonight, working on, I think one of the main issues is the stormwater question. We're paying high attention to that because we know that's one of the big concerns. So if you have any questions of me or...
Anyone have questions for Bill? For the engineer? Okay, so do you have a question for the engineer or Bill? Okay.
Mr. Carter, thank you. I have no questions that will affect my decision, but just a curiosity. Après village, why not après le village or after the village? Because you have a French word and an English word, and the more tourists will come, the more confused they will get.
So what's your question?
Is why the name this way?
Got to come up with something. I mean,
Okay.
we could have called it any number of things and discussing it, and we finally just had to come up with something because we needed to submit our application. And I will say I was the one that came up with it.
So after the village?
Huh?
after the village?
You know, I think oftentimes we associate après as maybe après-skiing. We get together, groups and friends, after a good day of skiing on the mountain. Well, the people that come to Whitefish are coming here for one reason, really the quality of life. We have a recreational paradise, and we're getting like-kind people moving here all the time. I've been here since 1990. I was in real estate development for 10 years before I started my company, Montana Rockworks. And one of the things I always found was well, who's coming there? You know, there's certain people that wanted to lock the Golden Gate behind them, and yet the people coming here, we're all coming here for the same reason, the quality of life. So that kind of played into my thought process of why I named it that. Yeah.
Just for the record, I don't think that was a really serious question.
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Rebecca, do you have any questions for Bill? Okay, then we'll have your engineer come up so Rebecca can ask you a question. Thank you, Bill.
Good evening. My name's Cody Johnson. I'm with 406 Engineering. My address is 35 8th Street East, Kalispell.
Go ahead, Rebecca. Yeah.
Yeah, we got letters from the neighbors that are concerned about displacement of water onto their property. You probably have heard this or not?
Yeah, I have. I've read quite a few of the comments, email-wise.
Okay, and also I confirmed with Wendy, our planner, that we only have a preliminary idea of what you're going to be planning to do there, but there is suspected high groundwater, so
Yes.
probably no basements if it's 6 feet or
There is
higher.
areas on the property, southeast corner primarily, where there's high groundwater. If you get further west, there was actually holes that were completely dry. We monitored it last spring.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, March 15th through June 30th per the Whitefish regulations.
Oh, good.
The highest groundwater was in the southeast corner where we're proposing underground storm detention. We're basically volume-wise holding the 100-year storm, post-developed storm, and then we release it at a pre-developed rate from there. So we're definitely taking high groundwater into consideration, and we'll have a more full detailed set of plans here that the city will review shortly. So
If the plan fails, how do you work with the neighbors on a design that, so we're going into more warming, things might melt quickly, we might have more water all of a sudden in some places.
Yep.
So these areas that have historically held a lot of groundwater, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And then we're building impervious surfaces on them, and then, so we could have unexpected consequences. So how do the neighbors know that they won't be harmed?
Well, we're going to design it per Whitefish City regulations, which is, containing the 100-year 1% chance at a 100-year storm event, which is massive. So that's, we're abiding by the regulations with the stormwater containment.
All right, and then I confirmed, I'm kind of saying this for the neighbors' benefit, I confirmed with our city engineer that you as a professional engineer have to certify the work.
Correct.
And you inspect it as it's being done, so it's done
Yep.
to your specifications. So, and then the city has standards that you meet as well.
Yeah, that is correct. I'll be certifying the underground stormwater detention area, making sure it's built correctly and signing off on it, putting my stamp on it, as well as other things on the project too. So
There's a garden that's at risk is why, people have put a lot of work into their, so, all right, thank you. I
Yep.
just wanted to explain
yep.
that sort of to the public, but also to let you know that people are worried about it, so just
yeah,
be
I
careful.
definitely understand and have seen the comments, so we're going to address everything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Cody? Thank you, Cody.
Thank you.
All right. We will open this to the public now. If you would like to come up and speak on this matter, please come up and state your name and address for the record. and we'd love to hear what you have to say.
My name's Nancy Hayes. I live at 961 Colorado Avenue.
Nancy, if you could speak into the microphone.
Nancy
please.
Hayes,
Thank you.
961 Colorado Avenue. And I am the neighbor to the northeast point on this project. My one question tonight, because I understand we may get about a walkabout with you when things get rolling, and I appreciate the low density on the housing thing. Way happy about that. There was no perk test done anywhere near our corner of the corner of the property near us.
Ms. Hayes, just as a point of order, this is your chance to
You.
address us
You,
as the
okay.
council and not
There was no
not the
perk
audience.
test
Thank you.
in place. We know where all the other ones were out in the field, and we didn't have one anywhere near our corner of the property. And we know how wet it is. I'm no engineer, I'm no hydrologist, but we know the soil structure of this area. We've lived by there for 20 years, and it doesn't drain well, and there was no visible test of the water retention in this corner of the property. And that's right next to our garden. So in the event of these different 100-year situations happening, and roofs and asphalt and things, yes, we're a bit concerned. And above us, the ground is about 8 to 10 feet high, and it goes down into this corner. I don't know if you've been able to see the lay of the land too much, but it's the highest point is right behind our house, and it goes right down to what we think is the lowest point on the property. And we don't even know how it drains because there was no visible study done there. So it concerns us. And our garden is right next to this piece of the property. So I guess I just wanted to get up and reiterate what we've already kind of talked about. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Anyone else wish to speak on this matter? Anyone else from the public?
Recognize.
I got this, Rebecca. Thank you. Let them chat for a second, and then Cody, if you'd like to come back up and address that comment of whether or not you had a perk test in that corner or not.
We have completed a test hole in the northeast corner. I don't have a scale on this map, but it appeared to be about 50 feet from the property boundary. I can pass this map around with the council if you guys want to see it.
Sure. You have to speak into the mic, otherwise people online can't hear, so.
We completed 8 different test holes on the property and monitored them last spring, so.
Okay. You wouldn't happen to have is that part of your packet that you turned in for your application?
I don't know
Be
if
good to
that,
have in the record.
I don't know if that particular map was in the original packet or not.
Okay, I didn't see it, but maybe you can amend that so we have that as
Sure,
part
yes.
of the record.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, anyone else wish to speak on this matter? Okay, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Okay,
Patrick Clark, 2 Dugan's Way, Whitefish. Just live directly kind of west of the subdivision that's proposed. My comments are just sort of in general, I guess. We lived there 23 years next to the property. For a long time, it was sort of the de facto open space for the neighborhood. People walk their dogs out there, quite a few people familiar with the area. I'm in the construction business, so, from my perspective, I sell timber packages for a living, so I'm not opposed to building houses. But, after 2.5 decades living in that part of Whitefish, My observation is that historically speaking, those were the Whitefish 5-acre town sites. And, you know, they, generally speaking, over the decades, always had sort of a semi-rural feel to them up until maybe, you know, the most recent subdivisions that were developed north of Denver. And, you know, like if you stare further north to Crestwood and that area there, even though there's like a relative density to what's been done, it generally speaking has more of a semi-rural feel to it, especially when you take into account all of the open space, some of that conservancy land, and the larger open meadows in that area. And, you know, going along with that, in the time that we've lived there, we've seen black bears, grizzly bears, mountain lions, lots of small wildlife, most of those critters in our yard, moose, untold numbers of deer coming through there. And there is sort of a general migration corridor that comes from the Viking Creek area, moves up through the Crestwood area, basically comes right through Dugan's Way, and then goes across to the east and through that subdivision, and then across some of the other open space, and then loops back around to the conservancy land that's sort of behind the end of Texas, I guess. And I guess my question to the council is, I mean, I appreciate the idea that it's only 16 houses versus 46 houses. Like, I don't think anybody was going to think that that was a great idea to put 46 houses on that parcel. And I'm also not in favor of having just a few lots there and building big mansions on it and selling it to wealthy people. I don't think that's a great idea either. But my question, I guess, to the council is there a place to have more open space in Whitefish, especially on that interface where we go from, you know, north of the viaduct and we start bleeding out into the mountains? There's a lot of open space there still. And is the long-term vision that we're just going to pack that with houses like it was Columbia Avenue or Kalispell Avenue? Or what is the vision? Because at some point in time, it's going to be very fragmented there, which also leads to a question of these. I'm not a huge fan of subdivisions that have cul-de-sacs at the end of them. And I'm starting to see just like road, cul-de-sac. Is that ever actually going to punch through to Texas or not? Probably not. I mean, I would be more in favor of the idea of something more like a Kalispell or a Columbia if things were more interconnected. But I don't know. I guess the greater question is, at what point do we just develop all of the landscape all the way to the mountains and stop? Thanks.
Thanks, Patrick. Anyone else? This is your last chance here, folks. If you'd like to speak, now's the time. Okay, I am going to close the public hearing, and I will bring it back to the board for a motion.
Mr. Acting Deputy Mayor, I move to approve the Après Village preliminary plat WPP 23-01 as presented by the staff.
I'll second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Giuseppe, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I'd love to speak to it. Zoning is law, and when a developer or an owner buys, it gets stuck with that zone, WR3, I am WSR, where I live, and that's the rule of engagement to me. So I actually feel for the fact that it is very important to have a long-term plan for the city. That's why I've always been adamant, and finally, we're all working towards a rewrite of the growth policy, because it's important to put legislation, which is zoning or land use, in place that mirrors the 40 years. We're playing with the 20 years vision for Whitefish, but ideally 40 years vision. So for that reason, right now, on that WR3, I'm actually pleased to see, but that's a personal pleasantry. The rules are the rules. Doesn't matter what personally I like or I don't like. I move to approve without further discussion.
Further discussion? Rebecca?
I just wanted to mention a couple things that the neighbors brought up. One is that we don't have architectural review for single-family homes. We have them for duplex and above. So there was some concerns about the way the aesthetics of that neighborhood were developing, and we don't have design standards for single-family homes. So I don't think we're going to do that either, but I mean, sorry, I just wanted to bring that up. We don't have an open space bond, but that's how a lot of cities do create funding for open space. So if there's people in the community that would like to see us preserve open space, that's one way to do that. We also, with every project, we do reach out to the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and we basically never get a no related to wildlife, which is always upsetting to the people that are living on the landscape and see wild animals using these landscapes over and over again. But it means that we can't preclude development based on any kind of wildlife protection. So that does come up a lot with discussion. And then the last thing I wanted to mention to the public is if someone displaces water onto your property, that's technically illegal and it's called trespassing, and it has gone to the courts. And so, you know, if you're really concerned about that, work with the people that are designing this. Otherwise, I'm glad that the single-family homes are being introduced as a way to match the existing neighborhood, and I like the potential of there being a larger park area in the future as well. So I'll be voting in favor.
Ben, you want to weigh in?
Sure, I'll just say that I feel this development is consistent with other developments in the area, as well as our growth planning and policy documents, and I trust the stormwater concerns will be addressed through good engineering. So I will be voting in favor of the project.
Okay. This puts me in a weird spot. Am I supposed to vote now? Okay, because I'm just the acting mayor. Okay. Okay. Since I will, acting deputy mayor. Just a couple comments. I would like to address Patrick's comment about what is the plan, and we do have a plan, and it's in our growth policy, and it's also in our zoning, and that is what Giuseppe's mentioning when he talks about there's a rule for each parcel of property that's within the city and what you can do and what you can't do on it. And if you're concerned, it does take a little bit of work to figure out what your neighborhood is zoned. And some zoning looks a lot different than what's currently there. And this one is WR3, which allows some smaller sort of multifamily housing, and they're not even proposing any of that, which is how you'd get to 46 dwelling units rather than 46 houses. So they're proposing only single-family houses. So it could be much denser, but they are developing it to what they see as what the current existing situation in the neighborhood is. And with that said, it would be nice if we could control subdivisions and require people to build housing for our local workforce, but we simply can't do that, and we tried, and the state took that right away from us, and it might get worse in the next couple weeks, so we'll see about that. Anyway, with that said, I agree with this subdivision. I appreciate the hard work that's gone into this, and there, of course, are concerns with high groundwater in that area, and those will be dealt with per our city regulations on that, and that's how that part works. So, okay. Those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, like sign. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Which brings us to item 7 on our agenda, communications from the city manager. I assume this is going to be mostly a legislative update, or maybe we don't want to know.
You don't want to know. I've been pulling my hair out every day. Unfortunately, what we're seeing at the legislature still hasn't changed. We are seeing an attack on local control and communities being able to plan their communities how they want to see it. They're also attacking financial means for cities. So in my manager's report, I do have those that were at the time concerning bills. We have added many more to that list over the past week since they've been back from transmittal. I do want to bring your attention to Senate Bill 268, which is the short-term rental bill. That bill would allow all primary residential properties to be short-term rental, including any ADUs or the primary home. Primary residence is defined as 7 months or more, and then it would also allow a property directly adjacent to that property owner's home to be short-term rented. I have tried to work with Senator Hertz on the bill, tried to get ADUs eliminated from that. He is not willing to do so. There is a hearing this Friday, March 24th, so City Council, send in your comments. If you go onto the website, I can send out the link. Hopefully the public will also comment. I see this bill passing through fairly easily based on how fast it passed through the Senate. This is our last chance. We also had Senate Bill 262 had a hearing today regarding business licensing in Whitefish. We are still trying to work really hard to have that bill killed, but it, again, is a difficult session that could affect about $268,000 worth of revenue in the general fund. We have not hired the code enforcement position that was budgeted to help with short-term rental enforcement because of this uncertainty. So we're going to continue to hold steady on that job and not advertise for it because of that, because that will be a significant hit to our general fund. There are more bills out there looking to limit property taxes. We have many more of the bills that were heard in the Senate side or House side are now on the other House or Senate, and so we'll be working to submit our comments as we have in the past. But I can tell you that this has probably been one of the challengingest times that I've been through with the legislature, and it's very frustrating to say the least. The sentiment at the state, I would say, is build more and prices will come down. Unfortunately, with the short-term rental bills that are out there, Whitefish is so unique as a resort community, and I've tried to make this clear, tried to ask to eliminate resort communities from some of these bills because we are different than all of Montana. I mean, we have about 3 times the number of short-term rentals that Kalispell does. That's just simply it. You can see what the difference in demand does. With that, that's where we're sitting legislative-wise. The one question I do have for council this evening, and this is just some general direction, for our impact fee study that is ongoing, we've been working with our consultants. They are making headway, and they've met with the impact fee committee recently. They're looking at expanding the park maintenance building impact fee to include park improvements or recreation centers such as the Armory. Is that something, now if that's to be done, it would obviously increase the impact fee because you're increasing the projects eligible. Is that something, and obviously I'll be able to review the final report and where we get to at a public hearing, but just general direction, is that something that you would like us to look at expanding that fee to cover other park needs, or are we just looking at straight update? I couldn't give him a good sense of what I felt on that part. So just your comments, you don't have to all be in consensus, just comments so I can kind of come up with direction would be great.
I would just say that without 3 of us here, it's kind of hard to even get a full consensus of.
Yeah, and I don't need a consensus right now, but just your thoughts on expanding the park impact fee to include other park projects.
Can I ask a question
It
first?
can be individual thoughts, yeah.
Where does expanding parks primarily funded from today if it's not impact fees?
So resort tax is where we do most of our park improvement projects out of. Impact fees, if we were to increase this, it would take into account money set aside for park improvements through resort tax. So it kind of credits the impact fees for those dollars. But that is our primary source of funds. Parkland acquisition development also is possible. We get those through subdivisions, but it's so sporadic. you know, we probably said around $30,000 to $60,000 in those accounts at times.
Good.
I'll offer an opinion. New residents mean we need more parks. So philosophically, it seems like impact fees would be a logical place to have some funding for parks, provided that the overall impact fee cost and structure is reasonable and what we would expect. I don't see an issue with having expanding parks as being something that is partially funded by growth and development, which is what impact fees are.
Go ahead, Giuseppe.
Yes, and we talked at the Impact Fee Committee too. When we put a plan in place and we clarify how we charge the impact fees and how they're administered, which we're doing right now, we are actually, as a committee, we're all pro actually covering all possible impacts of a new development. That's why we asked to add the transportation impact, and absolutely, so if there is a development that impacts, in theory, even on the school system, not that we have jurisdiction, but in theory, any new development, which is not a resident who lives here already, someone who's developing new, any impact created by that new development should be taken care of. Now, there is a situation where the development could say, instead of paying impact fee for parks within my subdivision, I will build a park proportionally big enough to cater to the new impact. So there could be complications in assessing that, but in principle, I'm absolutely for it.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
I'm in favor. I think any way that we can get maintenance funded is really important. When I was the local government commissioner, that came up a lot with the staff, and that we didn't have mechanisms for funding maintenance. And we have more and more visitation every year. So I think it's not only the locals, but the people that come here to visit are impacting our parks as well. So I'm in favor.
And just to clarify, impact fees can only be spent on capital items, not maintenance, but it could potentially free up funds that are generally used in our parks fund to use for maintenance. So it definitely could free up other funds that have been used for capital. So, yep.
And I'm certainly in favor. I think we need to look at how our zoning regulations work with respect to parks and open space as well, because we don't want to be perceived as double dipping or whatever you might want to call that. But in the general philosophy, yes, it makes sense for impact fees to cover part of the impact to our city of new development.
Thank you. Appreciate your
direction
comments.
there?
Yes, that
Okay.
is. Yep, absolutely. And that's all I have this evening, unless you have questions for me on my staff report.
Any questions for Dana? I don't want to ask how bad it really is, but I'm not going to. Any other items arising between March 15th and the 20th?
You know, I think one thing, and I know Rebecca is probably wanting to talk about it a bit, she was copied on an email from Justine with FWP. We are seeing bears are out. They're back. Black bear has been spotted in town. And what we're finding is the animal-resistant containers are being left out, whether they're left out on the right-of-way, which they're not supposed to be, but if they're left out, they aren't latching, because people might fill them too full or just aren't pushing down. So we're going to work on some PSA, get some information out there about you need to have it latched. We're also going to work on our ordinance, because it is confusing, because it does say in there like animal-resistant containers should be unlatched day of service. That was for a different type of container. The trucks now actually unlatch it themselves by the way it drops it. So we'll work on an ordinance amendment just to make that very clear. But our police department will work on enforcing that, obviously first with warnings, but then we will move forward with ticketing for individuals not keeping their animal-resistant containers latched, because it doesn't serve a purpose if they aren't latching closed. So that's all my updates from then.
Okay, thanks, Dana. You have a question about that?
Deputy Mayor.
Acting Deputy Mayor.
Acting Deputy Mayor. So when people have overfilled the bin and they can't latch it, do we actually impose another charge on them, or do we not do that?
So I have to check with Republic Services. I think if it fits within the container and they don't have bags set to the side, they aren't charging them for extra pickup, but if they were outside of the container, they absolutely would. It's something we can discuss with them. I think it'll be difficult for, determining is it fully latched or is it latched or not, and are people squishing it down? So we're gonna have to look at Republic and see what they're doing. The best way for people not latching it or overfilling it is really through this citation process, that they aren't following code. But if there's like a bag sitting outside the container, they will charge an extra pickup. We pass that cost on to that homeowner.
Okay, and then the other question I had is, Toby brought up recycling again, and at our retreat, we decided to put it on hold for now, Toby, just because we're still working with the bear-proofing containers. We will get back to it, but we just are waiting a little bit on the centralized one. But Republic can bring to an individual home a box for personal recycling. And I don't do that because I don't have enough, but I think it's $15 extra a month. Does anybody do that?
That seems about right.
I think it's 15, but it's not bear-proof, so that's part of the...
Right. But it allows people to recycle cardboard and aluminum, probably not plastic, but paper. So that's an option for people that are waiting on us to have a centralized recycling program. And then, okay, that's all that I wanted to ask Dana about at this point.
Okay, that brings us to communications from the acting deputy mayor and city councilors. So we'll start with Rebecca.
I just wanted to ask Angie about the rail safety efforts from the city. We drafted a letter to Senator Testers and Senator Daines and Representative Zinke, and just wondering if there's any update on that, Angie. I'm looking at you up there because you're projected behind us. Sorry. Do you want to give us an update at all on that?
I think, Rebecca, at this point, I'm just looking for feedback from council. I definitely got your feedback. I think Dana and I would like feedback from all council, and then we could put it on the next agenda so you guys can give a head nod for us to send that letter.
Okay.
Dana, or I'm sorry, Angie, is that currently in an email thread with the proposed letter, or?
Yes, it should be
Okay.
on your, it should be on your city emails. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But
Is that all, Rebecca? Or you have more? Well, this is it. This is your last chance. We're at that agenda item. This is communications from counselors.
So I might as well bring up Toby's issues then, which is the electric vehicle charging stations. Right now we have them at Town Pump and we have 2 in the parking structure. I do like the idea of having them on the street, but I don't know if that's practical with our ice and snow. And then also painting of the signal boxes. Craig, do you want to answer those questions?
I can take the charging stations. So there's currently 4 charging stations here at in the parking structure. There's 2 in covered lease parking and 2 up on the top deck at uncovered parking. And then we do have budgeted for this current fiscal year to install 2 charging stations. I believe they're going to go on Railway Street on the south side of Depot Park is the intention. So we are working towards installing more charging stations.
it's, okay. Thanks, Toby.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you, Toby and Craig, that it's already on the books. And then, who would answer the question about beautification of the city?
Oh, that probably fall to me. You know, I think that that's something council, if they decide would like us to look into, I think the council as a whole could direct us. I would recommend bringing it up at the next council meeting. I know we've talked about it before, but I don't think there was traction then. So maybe at the next council meeting, bring it up under councilor comments so we can get a
Whoever's painting the
consensus.
sidewalks, I'm sure would be another great art project for the schools, so I
Yeah.
think that would be,
Yeah, we can get direction to work with
Okay.
Flat Electric.
okay, thank you. Okay, Ben, anything? Giuseppe?
I was not going to make a comment, but since we're having fun tonight, Toby, don't say that you're going recycling driving a 12 miles a gallon truck, because the two don't work together very well.
Okay, is that all, Giuseppe? Craig, I have a question for you, because I'm always kind of trying to look ahead, and I've noticed that our streets seem to have taken a beating this winter. Is it worse than usual, or am I just noticing that the giant pothole on Caro that I'd never seen before is it maybe just that one spot?
I
Do you
don't
have any
think-
sense of whether
I don't
it's
think it's
worse?
worse than usual. March and early April are always the absolute worst times for roads when the frost is coming out of the ground. You know, the ground is moving so much in that top foot and it hasn't released from the bottom yet. I wouldn't say it's worse than usual, but we typically don't evaluate roads in early spring for that exact reason, but we're out there filling potholes every day, so.
Okay.
I don't know if we caught the one, where's the one on Caro? I can make sure we,
It's actually, I think it's in the county, it's just south of the four-way stop
Okay.
with 7th. And then if you're out there and you think about it and you have time, the giant pothole that eats cars right by Coffee Traders when you turn off of Blanchard Lake Road.
oh, yeah, that's definitely in the county. That one is like, you
I
gotta
know.
get over into the other lane.
Yeah, it's bad. I've just been noticing, it just seems, I don't know, maybe I just notice it more now. But I just wanted to make sure that, yeah, you're on. I knew you would be, but. And then the other thing, I want to congratulate Maeve Engelfinger. She is a junior at Whitefish High School. She won the national championship under 18 freestyle sprint event at the Junior Nationals cross-country ski championship in Alaska last week. So that's a pretty doggone big accomplishment for a local kid. So just want to recognize her, and good friends with her family, and that's quite an accomplishment. And with that, if there's nothing else, we are adjourned.